Duplicati. So this month's Spotlight app is called Duplicati. It's a really smart backup tool we can install as a Docker container in our Unraid server. It's efficient, it's secure, and it works across all sorts of different storage setups. Now, I know some of you out there in YouTube land, you're probably thinking, why do I even need a backup? I've got Unraid, I've got my parity drive so I can lose drives, so I'm covered, right? Well, hold your horses, because that's not quite right. Now, to explain that RAID is not a backup, I'm going to do that by telling you a quick story. It involves a truck, a critical mission, and some very important medicine that needs to make it across the sea from the UK to France. So as you can see here, the truck's in great shape. It's been well looked after, strong engine, solid transmission, good brakes. It's built to go the distance. That's a bit like our Unraid servers. Maybe we've got good hardware in there, parity drives, even a ZFS mirror, proper redundancy, and just like the truck has multiple tyres to keep it rolling, if one blows out, our server can keep going if a drive fails. Here the truck's carrying life-saving medicine, your server is carrying your critical data. So yep, on paper, they're pretty solid. The kind of setup that makes us feel like we're safe. But if we actually care about what our server's carrying, the cargo, then a proper backup is what really matters. And that's where our second truck comes in. Another reliable vehicle, built just as well, ready to do the same job. Now, remember, we need to get that medicine from the Duplicati facility here in the UK all the way to a hospital in France. It's a long journey, but with 2 trucks, we're in good shape. And to get there, we've got a couple of options. Both trucks are going to have to cross the sea, so one takes the Channel Tunnel and the other goes by ferry. At this point, everything looks fine. But then a disaster. Something out of the truck's control. That dodgy ferry carrying it hits bad weather, and during the storm the truck slips off into the water, and no amount of good tyres and good engines is going to save our precious cargo now. That's going to the bottom of the sea, never to be seen again. Now, if we didn't have our second truck, that backup truck, well, that would be the end of this story. But we did. It went a different way, disaster was avoided, and it got to its destination, and everyone was very happy. And so now we can see why RAID, or Unraid 2, is not a backup. And in this video, I'm going to be showing you how to build your second truck, how to use Duplicati. Okay, so the first thing that makes Duplicati special, I think, is its history. This isn't some new shiny app that's just come out. It's actually been around since the late 2000s. It started its life as a Windows backup tool, but was completely rebuilt from the ground up into what we know today as Duplicati 2.0. It's open source, cross-platform, and over the years it's grown into something really solid with smart features, great flexibility, and a community behind it that's kept it evolving. But let's talk about what really makes it cool, deduplication. Duplicati, it isn't just copying files and folders like a basic sync tool, it actually breaks down files into small blocks, I think about 100 KB each by default, and it only backs up the blocks that have changed. So, imagine you've got a large file, say a 100 meg database or a big config file, and you make one tiny change. Maybe you update a row or tweak a setting. Duplicati doesn't have to re-upload the whole file. It figures out which parts of the file have changed and only stores those new chunks with the new backup. So that's true deduplication in action. And over time, especially if you're doing regular backups, it can save a really serious amount of storage, bandwidth, and backup time. Now, you might be thinking other tools like rsync, when using hard links, and ZFS, with its snapshotting and ZFS replication, well, they're very similar. And how does Duplicati actually stack up against these? Well, let's start with rsync. Now, this is a favourite for not only me, but many others. And with hard links, you can actually build version backups that are pretty clever and very efficient. But rsync, it works at the file level. If even a single byte changes in a file, rsync's going to treat it as new and recopy the whole thing. It doesn't look inside the file to see what actually changed, so for large or frequently updated files, it's not really very efficient. So Duplicati, it actually takes this a step further. It checks inside the files, identifies only the changed blocks, and then stores just those. Even if 99% of the files are untouched, it will upload those changed blocks. That makes it ideal for things like documents, databases, config files, logs, anything where there's only small changes that happen over time. Now, for those of us running ZFS, we're probably thinking, hang on, doesn't ZFS do this too? And yes, ZFS replication really is the gold standard when it comes to backing up these big data sets. It takes a snapshot at the block level and then can send only the changes between them. So if you're backing up things like VM disks or large volumes between two ZFS systems, ZFS replication, in my opinion, is pretty hard to beat. And the key difference here is Duplicati is working at the application level. So it doesn't care about what file system you're using. Whether it's ButterFS, XFS, it really doesn't matter. You'll still get deduplication, versioning, encryption, and the ability to back up to the cloud or another server over Tailscale, all without relying on a specific storage backend. But yeah, of course, Duplicati has limits. If you're backing up something like a 100 gig vdisk from a VM, and even a small change inside the VM might make large parts of the file look different at the binary level, so in that case, Duplicati may end up reprocessing and re-uploading more data than we'd really like it to do. So that's where ZFS still has the edge, because it sees what happens deep inside the actual storage layer and not the application layer. Anyway, but something like a log that grows over time, that's where Duplicati really shines. It picks up the new blocks, skips the rest, and keeps the backups fast and lean. But that's not all. One of my favourite things about Duplicati, obviously, is we can back up things to the cloud. But if you're like me, and you don't really like having your private data on the cloud, well, Duplicati, what it does is it encrypts everything locally before it's uploaded to the cloud. So if you upload your backup to, say, Google Drive, even Google can't see inside your backup, so it's totally private. So, to wrap up this chapter, the things I think that make Duplicati special is its deduplication, encryption, maturity, and ease of setup. So, let's move on to the next chapter and get this container set up. Okay, so here we are on my server Battlestar here. And before we install Duplicati here, when we do install Duplicati, we're actually going to do 4 different types of backups. The first is going to be to a cloud storage provider. I'm going to use Google Drive. The second is going to be a local backup. I'm going to back up from my array here to another location on the server, on this ZFS pool here. The third backup is going to be from this server to another server on my local LAN. And finally, we're going to look at backing up onto an attached USB drive connected by unassigned devices. And stay watching till the end, because I'm also going to be sharing with you a script that will allow us, when we plug in the USB drive, without having to do anything at all, it will trigger the backup job and be able to back up from our Unraid server onto that USB drive. Before we start, Duplicati needs us to have a local storage location on the server for local backups. So I'm going to create that share now, and I'm going to create my share on this pool here. So I'm going to go across to shares and add share, and I'm just going to call the share backup _ local. And I want this to be on the pool called Raptor here. And the minimum free space I'm going to set for 100 gigs. Okay, so with that done, now let's go across to the Apps tab here, and we can either do a search here for Duplicati, or we can just install it from the Spotlight apps here. So let's click on to install, and I'm going to use the stable release here, although you can choose the development one, but as of making this video, you will have to install the development one if you want to actually have a USB device plug into the Unraid server and it trigger a Duplicati backup to that. But for now, I'm going to install the stable version. Okay, so the template is really easy to fill out. So here under Path Backups, this is where we actually have to put our local backup path, which for me here is this one, backup local. Now for the source path, this is what we actually want to be able to back up from. So what I do here is I actually don't choose an actual individual share from here. Just click onto these two dots, go up a level and choose /MNT/user. What this will do is allow the container to be able to access all of your shares. So later on we can choose exactly what we want to back up from across the whole server. Now next we need to put in a settings encryption key, and this needs to be at least 8 characters long. And next, if we scroll down, we just need to put in a password for the web UI when we log into Duplicati. So we can put that in here. So with that done, that's all we need to do. So let's just click on to apply and pull down the container. Okay, great. Now we can see it's installed. So I'm going to go to my Docker tab here. I'm going to click onto Duplicati and go to Web UI. So here we put in the password we made a moment ago, and that brings us into the Duplicati Web UI. Now the first thing I like to do is go to settings here, and if we scroll down here, on usage statistics, I prefer not to have this set to default. I just set this to crashes only. Now also while we're here, we can see here the update channel. Now don't change your update channel here. It always should be on default, same as the base install version. And because I chose stable in a Docker container, that's what my base install version is. If you wanted to actually change it, then you'd change it in the container template. Okay, let's click on OK and save that. And next, let's do our first backup. So now let's add our first backup, a cloud backup. So obviously let's click on Add Backup, and we've got two choices here: to create a new backup from scratch or to import from a file. Now at the moment we don't have any files to be able to actually import from, so I'm going to configure a new backup. So here I'm going to give it a title, and I'm going to call this Nextcloud Data, and you can give it a description if you want to. Now here under encryption we can choose to use encryption, and it uses AES-256, or we can have no encryption. Now, I don't recommend having no encryption unless you're backing up locally to your own server or another server on your own network. But if you're backing up to the cloud or to another server elsewhere over Tailscale, which we'll look at a bit later, then I highly recommend using encryption. And so we need to put in an encryption passphrase, and we need to put it in twice. So obviously we need to remember what this is. So with that done, let's click on to Next. And now we need to choose the destination of where the backup is actually going to go to. Now, for that, we click on to storage type, because at the moment it's set to a local folder or drive. But first, we're going to back up to the cloud. So here we can see all of the different cloud providers that Duplicati supports out of the box. Now, I'm going to use the regular Google Drive here. So next, I'm going to click on Auth ID here to authorize Duplicati to be able to access my Google Drive. So I'm going to click on Google Drive here, and here we'll have a few warnings that Duplicati is going to access the account. That's all fine, so I'm going to click on to continue. Okay, so the Auth ID has been fetched. So now what we need to do is copy it onto our clipboard. Then we can close the window, and then we paste that ID string in here. Now, be sure not to let anyone see it or copy it, because they will be able to connect your Google Drive with that key, so always keep it private. I'll be deleting this, obviously, after this video. Now, on Path to Server here, this is where we choose where on Google Drive that we want the backups for this particular job to go. So for all of my Duplicati backup jobs, I want them in the same place, so I'm putting /Duplicati, but I want each job to go into a subfolder. So after that, I'm putting / and then Nextcloud Backup. So with that done, I'm going to click Test Connection. And here it's saying that that folder doesn't exist. And shall we create it now? Well, yes, let's create it. And the connection works, so we can click on to OK. So now if we go to our Google Drive, and I click on My Drive here, we can see there's the folder, Duplicati, and inside there is Nextcloud Backup. So that's all been created fine. Now, if we look at the advanced options here, so with that done, I'm just going to go here and click on to Next. And now we need to choose the source data. Now, you'd think you'd click on here where it says source data, But no, this isn't the actual right place. We need to click on Computer here, and then we scroll down, and this is the file structure inside of the container. So what we're looking for here is this one here, source. Because if you remember, /source is linked to all of our shares here. So if I click on the little arrow here, and then underneath source, we can see here all of my shares. So what we can do is we can tick whatever we want. So for instance, if I was going to choose ISOs, I could either choose the whole folder, or if I click the little arrow here, I could actually just choose individual things inside. But I'm going to choose Nextcloud data. And in fact, to keep this video pretty short, I'm just going to actually include my own folder here. And this is a new Nextcloud install, so it has a very, very small amount of data in it. But it means the backup's going to be quick. So with that done, I'm going to click onto Next. And here we can choose a schedule of when this is going to run. If we didn't want that, we can untick this, and then we'll be able to run it manually ourselves. But I do want to actually have it run on a schedule. So here we can choose which days it's allowed to run. So maybe if you're using your server in an office environment, you might want to untick Saturday and Sunday, as no data is being made on those days. But I'm not in an office, so I'm going to have every day for this to be allowed to run. And we can choose how often it runs, from daily or every 2 days, 3 days, or we can even have it run every few minutes, hours, days, weeks, months and years. But for me, once a day is going to be fine. And here under General Options, the remote volume size, it's recommended to leave it at 50 megabytes. And for the backup retention, we've got some options here to keep all backups. We can have it delete backups that are older than a certain date, keep a specific number of backups. But in my opinion, a good option is to use the smart backup retention here. And this will ensure that we've got one backup for the last of the 7 days. So that will mean we've got 7 daily backups, 4 weekly backups, and 1 from each of the last 12 months as time goes forward. So with that done, I'm going to click on to save. Now I'm not going to wait for the schedule to start. I'm going to click on Run Now and run a backup straight away. So there's no need to watch the backup go through, so let's speed up the video. Now we can see that was an extremely small backup, but remember that was the plan for the sake of the demo. But you could back up things as large as you like, gigabytes or even terabytes of data. I just chose a small thing for the sake of the demo in this video. So let's quickly have a look at where this actual data's gone. Let's go across to Google Drive and have a look at how it looks over there. And we have a look in our Duplicati folder. In the Nextcloud backup, here we can see all of the files that make up that backup. And as you can see, they're all encrypted. And so Google can't spy on what my data is here. Awesome. Okay, so let's move on to the next chapter and do a local backup. Okay, so let's make our next backup. Let's make a local one from a share on the array to the backup folder that we made on this pool here. Now, when doing a backup, it's best to make sure that it is on a separate disk from the source, because obviously if the disk failed and your backup's on the same disk, then you would actually lose the backup as well. So let's go back across to Duplicati and click on Add Backup. Next, I'll just call this Local Backup now. And for this one, I'm actually going to have no encryption. And the destination, we leave it on local folder or drive. And again, the location we're looking for is under Computer, but this time Backups here. So this is our location of where it's backing up to. Remembering that /backups goes to our share here. Okay, so I'm not going to click Test Connection yet. I'm actually going to click here to manually type the path, and you'll see why in a moment. So the folder path I'm going to is Backups, but again, like before, I want to have it create its own folder in that share. So let's just call this Test Local, and I'm going to test the connection. It's telling me again the folder doesn't exist, so clicking yes will create it. Going back to Unraid, if we look in the share here, we can now see Test Local here. So let's click on to Next and choose our source data. Again, we need to go into Computer, scroll down and find Source. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to back up here all of this 3D prints and laser. Okay, so I'm going to click on to Next. And Schedule, I'm just going to leave as is. But Backup Retention, I'm going to choose this time to delete backups that are older than, let's say, older than 1 month. So we'll just have 1 month's worth of backups of this. Okay, so the backup job is all there. So I'm going to click on Run Now and get this done now. Again, let's speed this up. Now again, this is a very small amount of data to back up. That's all done, only 900 megs. But if we go back to the Unraid server and refresh this page inside the test local, we can see here all of our files. Okay, so that's our local backup done. So now let's move on, and I'm going to do a backup from one server to another. Okay, so here we are over here on another server called BaseStar. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Shares here and make a new share, and I'm going to call it Backup-Battlestar. And I'm going to add the share. And I'm going to scroll down here, and under SMB security settings, I'm going to set this to Export Yes. And for security, I'm going to go to Private, and I'm going to click Apply. Now, I've already got a user here called Ed, but what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to set up a new user, and the new user, I'm going to call it Battlestar, which is the name of the other server, and I'm going to pop in a password. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to the share we created, and now I'm going to enable read-write as well for Battlestar here. Okay, so if I go to Settings here, and Network Settings, if I look here at the local IP of the Unraid server, I could use this IP for Battlestar to be able to connect to this server here. But also, I've got Tailscale installed here. And so what I can do is I can use my Tailscale IP to be able to connect from Battlestar across here onto BaseStar. And by doing that, it doesn't matter how far apart and where on the globe each server is, I will always be able to do a backup to it from Battlestar. So let's go across to Battlestar here. And there's one plugin we're going to need to have installed. And that plugin, and that is Unassigned Devices and Unassigned Devices Plus. So with that installed, what we can do here now is click Add Remote SMB here and choose the Windows icon. And now for Enter or Select Server, we need to paste our Tailscale IP address here. Now, if we didn't want to do it over Tailscale and we're just doing it over our LAN, we could just paste the IP address of the destination server. So with that done, let's click on to Next. And for the username, we need to put in the username of the user we just created earlier. So for me, that's Battlestar and its password. And we don't need to put anything in for the domain. Now for Choose Share, I'm just going to click Load Shares. And so now I can just browse the shares here and choose Backup Battlestar and Done. And I'm going to click here and I'm just going to change this name just to Backup Battlestar here. And I'm going to click onto Mount. Okay, and so with that mounted, I'm just going to go to Settings here, and I'm going to set that to Auto Mount, so if I reset the server, it's going to mount that again. Now next, I'm going to go down here, click onto the mount point here, and I'm going to right-click here and get the full location. Let's click OK. I'm going to go to the Docker tab here, and now I need to edit the Duplicati container template. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add another location. So we've got /backups, we've got /source. So we need to add another backup path. So to do that, I'm going to click on here add another path port variable, label or device. And let's call this remote server. And for the container path, I'm going to put / backup and then hyphen, I don't know, base star, the name of the server, I think. And for the host path, I'm going to paste in /mnt /remotes. But for the access mode, I'm going to change this from read-write to read-write slave. With that done, I'm going to click on to add, and I'm going to click on to apply. Okay, so let's go back to the web UI, and let's add our remote server backup job. Let's click on to next, and let's just call this remote server here, and I'm going to put a description. And this time I am going to have a passphrase. And let's click on to next. And so now for destination, even though it's a remote server, we leave it on local folder or drive. And that's because we've bind mounted it or mapped it into the container. So here we can see backup. Unfortunately, I've spelt it wrong, but never mind. Now, again, like last time, I'm not going to just click test connection here. I'm going to manually type the path so I can have it create another folder. So let's call this test backup. Again, it doesn't exist, so let's click yes to create it. Okay, so that's done. And let's go back to base star quickly and have a quick look there. There's our test backup. So now let's go on and choose what we're actually going to back up. Again, we need to scroll down to source and expand this to see all of the shares. I'm going to back up, I think, some of the ISO images here. I'm going to back up, I think, the BSD ISOs because there won't be too many of them and it won't be too big. Now for the schedule, just to be different this time, I'm not going to have it automatically run. And the options, I'm going to have it just keep no more than 10 backups. Okay, so as this is manual, I'm going to click run now. Otherwise it will never do anything. And we're going to do 4 gigs worth of backups. And again, let's speed through all of this. Okay, so let's jump over to the remote server and take a look in the test backup folder. And here we can see the complete backup inside of this folder. So awesome. That completed over Tailscale from one server to another. So a great way to do backups between friends and family. So finally, let's move on to the next backup we're going to do, backing up to a USB external drive. Okay, so backing up to a USB drive is very similar to when we backed up to the remote share here. But there's one really cool thing we can do with the USB drive, which I'll show you as soon as we got this working. Now, I'm going to change the name of this to Sabrent-USB. And what we can do with unassigned devices is we can actually, on mount of the device, we can have it run a script. And what we're going to do is have it run a script that's going to trigger a backup that we're going to set up that we're not going to have scheduled, just like the remote server one. So it's triggered when we actually attach the unassigned disk. Okay, so I'm going to mount this now. And again, click onto the mount point. And I'm going to copy the location onto the clipboard. Again, back to the Docker tab. We're going to edit the template. At the bottom again, add another path. And this time I'm going to put /backup -ext USB. And the host path, obviously I'm going to paste in the location we just put on the clipboard. Access mode again. We want that as read-write slave. And let's click on to add. Okay, with that done, let's click apply and done. And go back to the Duplicati web UI. So let's add another backup and we'll call this ext-USB. I'm going to have encryption again. And for the destination, we can see here, I could choose one of these folders, but I'm going to just click on backup external USB here and then again go to manually type path. And I'm going to put Duplicati and then / USB. Let's test the connection to create the path. And next, now source data, let's back something up. Let's go to the ISOs again. We'll actually do the same as we did before, the BSD ones. Schedule, we don't want this to run automatically because we want it triggered from when the drive's plugged in. And backup retention, I'm going to use Smart Backup again. Okay, so that's ready to run, but I'm not going to click run now. So before we do anything, to be able to have a USB drive actually plug into the Unraid server and for it to trigger Duplicati, we need to use a feature of Duplicati that currently is only in the development version. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to change the tag in the Docker container to run that. So let's go across to the Unraid server, go to our Docker tab, and if we go down to Duplicati and click Edit, and we're going to take off latest here and type in development. Okay, so with that done, let's go back to the Duplicati web UI, and we can see now we're running the beta version 2.1.0.3. So with that done now, if you go across to my GitHub, my Space Invader 1 GitHub, and do a search for Unraid Duplicati USB backup, then click onto this script here, and click this icon here to copy the raw file, and then go to the Unraid server, go to the main tab, and if we scroll down here, I'm going to click on this cog here, on this settings cog, and then here we can use a script. So I'm just going to click on the default here, which populates this, and then I'm going to take all of this out and replace it with the script that we've got on the clipboard. Now, there's a few things we can fill in on this script. The most important is the container name. Now, unless you've changed the container's name, well, it should still be Duplicati lowercase, so you shouldn't have to change that. And the other thing here is the backup name. So I called mine ext-USB. So if you named your backup differently, then you'd need to put in the name here. Now, password, we can actually leave it blank, and it will take the password from the variable in the container. But if you didn't set the variable in the container and you use the web UI and Duplicati to change it, then you could put the password in here. You'll also notice a variable here called audio notification that's set to yes. What this will do if you have a beep speaker in your server is when the backup's actually complete after you've plugged the USB drive in, it plays the Mario achievement song, so you get an audible notice that the backup's finished and you can actually disconnect the drive. And if anything goes wrong, it plays the Star Wars Imperial March. So, with the script changed, we can click on to save. Before I click this and click done, you'll see here I've set my drive to auto mount. So whenever I plug in this USB, it will auto mount the drive and then it should run the script. Okay, so let's click on to done. And now I'm going to scroll down, unmount the drive and then remove it from the server. Now let's go to the Duplicati web UI and I'm going to take the USB hard drive here and plug it in. Okay, so up at the top of the screen on the Duplicati screen, we can see the backup started and it's going through. So that's all working fine. The backup's been triggered from the USB hard drive being plugged in. So let's jump back across to the Unraid server and go and have a look at the USB drive and see the files there. And inside the Duplicati folder and inside USB, here we've got all of our backups. So really, really useful, I think, to be able to just plug a USB hard drive in and have an encrypted backup going onto that. And also the fact that you don't need to dedicate a whole drive. You can just create a folder on there. And as you can see with my drive here, the file format is exFAT. So you could plug in any drive that you want that Unassigned Devices supports. So NTFS, ext4, exFAT, really whatever you want. Okay, so that brings us to the end of this chapter. Now, the next chapter, we're going to look at actually how we restore files. So to restore files, first I'm going to have to simulate a disaster. So I'm going to go to my ISO share here, into the BSD folder, and I'm going to delete here Ghost BSD. Now I'm going to go across to Duplicati. I'm going to click on to restore, and here we can choose from the restore jobs that we've done. I'm going to choose the external USB and click next. Now here we can see the list of jobs, and because there's only one, I can only obviously choose this date here. So I can see here everything inside of my backup. So I'm going to restore this one here that I know is missing, Ghost BSD, and I'm going to click on to continue. Now we've got two different choices here. We can either have it put it straight back into the original location, or we could choose to put it somewhere else. Now, if we were going to choose to put it somewhere else, just remember when you browse, you'd have to go to Computer, and to see all of the shares, now it sounds strange, we would go to Source. So then we could pop it into any of these locations here, or if we have made a new share, we could pop it into there. But I'm going to restore it back to the original location. And for permissions, I'm going to click here and restore the read-write permissions. So with that done, I'm going to click on to restore. And we can see it's starting to restore the file. And so it says the file has successfully been restored. So let's click on to OK. Go back across to the Unraid server, back into our ISOs, into BSD, and there we have Ghost BSD successfully restored. And basically restoring any file is just as simple as that. Really easy to do. So a really great backup tool. But before we wrap up this video, there's one more feature I want to show you. Okay, so the last thing we're going to be looking at is an online dashboard for Duplicati. And to get to that, we need to go to duplicati.com. Now, there's various versions of this dashboard. If we look at the pricing here, there's a free community version here that allows us to monitor our backups on up to 5 different machines. So if we're managing various different servers for friends and family members, we can monitor the backups from this dashboard. Now the backups stay in exactly the same place, either locally or up to your cloud. It doesn't actually redirect the backups anywhere else. This is just purely monitoring. And so I'm going to sign up for the free version here. I'm going to click on to log in. I'm going to sign in with my Google account, and I'm going to agree to terms and services, but I'm not going to agree to receive marketing emails. Okay, so this is the dashboard here. And as we can see, it says here there's no backups and no machines. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on to get started here. And there's a few choices here saying we can download various clients. Well, I'm going to click on Linux here and click on to next. And if we scroll down here, we can see what we're meant to do. So I'm going to copy this here and go over to my Duplicati web UI. I'm going to click on settings here, and I'm going to scroll right down to the bottom to advanced options here. I'm going to click edit as text, and here I'm going to paste in what I had on that clipboard. So with that done, I'm going to click on to OK. And now if we go back to the online dashboard and we click next, it's just telling us we can add a backup. Well, we've already done that, so let's click next again, and we're all ready to go. But at the moment, we don't see anything here at all. We don't see any machines, and we don't see any backups. So all we need to do now is go back to our Duplicati Docker container, go to Home, and run each one of these backup jobs one after another. And now if we go back to the online dashboard, we can see here on the dashboard, here's the machine, which is our Unraid server, with a total of 10 backups. So if I click on machines here, we can see we've got one machine here, and here are all of the backups that have been done. So you don't have to have this, it's totally optional, but quite a nice little thing to have, especially if you've got more than one Duplicati server. Anyway, guys, that brings us to the end of this video. Now, I really hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, then please subscribe to the channel, give this video a thumbs up, give it a like, and share it with anyone else who you think might find it useful. Anyway, I hope you all have a great day, and I'll catch you in the next video.
Free audio post-production by Alphonic.com.